Crossbows make an interesting alternative for those of us who enjoy target practice but don't wish to use a firearm. They're good for target practice, they're good for training, they're good for hunting, even potentially home defense situations. In this series of videos, we're going to take one of the least expensive and most commonly owned crossbow pistols and convert it into a tactical carbine, partly for fun. But I will warn you that, like a car, which is fun to drive, if used recklessly, it is dangerous. So safety has to come first, always, and we need to be very, very careful about what we're doing. It's fun, but it's not a toy. The platform I'm going to use is the Cobra Crossbow Pistol. The reason for using this particular crossbow pistol to create the carbine from is, for a start, it's literally, as far as I'm aware, the most popular crossbow pistol in the world, partly because of its low cost and partly because of its very good design. The Cobra comes in two variants, polymer plastic and aluminium. Now, the aluminum frame version of the Cobra is the one we're going to be working with, because the polymer, although very good just to use as a crossbow pistol for target practice or where permissible, legal, small game hunting, this sort of thing, it's not really strong enough for our purposes, because we're going to be doing modifications to it, obviously, and it needs to be the aluminum version. But this is so commonly owned by so many people, I decided to make it from this version, not least because you may already have one, and if you wish to upgrade it, this becomes a possibility without too much investment. Obviously, you're going to be having to spend some money on this project, but although you're going to have to spend a little bit, it's not going to be as much as if you just went out and bought a new tactical crossbow, and there are a few on the market. Probably the three most popular at the moment are the Adder, the AR-6 Stinger, and the Vlad, all of which are repeater crossbows suitable for tactical use. Whether you are just using that for training, whether you are, where it's legal, using that for hunting, whether you just have it for a bug out bag, whether you intend to use it for home defense, there's a lot of options. This particular version that we're going to make is going to be good for all of those things, but I will tell you, if you are minded to use this in a self-defense context, defending your home from an intruder at night, for example, do go to, if you haven't watched it already, go to the description, click on the link to my video on self-defense, the use of force, and the rules of engagement. Because if you use a weapon like this to defend yourself and you use it incorrectly, you'll find you're going to spend a great deal of time in a jail cell, and rightly so. But if you use it in accordance with the appropriate rules so that you're staying legal and not causing unnecessary harm to other individuals, you'll be fine, because you are legally entitled to defend yourself. But that doesn't mean you can do whatever to whomever just because you feel like it. That's what you need to be aware of. Anyway, with no further ado, let's have a look at the Cobra Crossbow Pistol. Now, the Cobra is a very inexpensive weapon to buy. In polymer, it costs somewhere between $25 and $35, depending on where you're buying it from. The aluminum version isn't that much more expensive, to be fair. One of these will cost you somewhere between, say, $35 and $45, depending on where you're buying it. Obviously, you can spend a little bit more, and you might even get lucky and spend a little bit less, but broadly speaking, if you go online and look for one of these, and they're not hard to find, they are around about that price point. This particular model is made by EK Archery, and the quality is excellent. Obviously, I've already assembled this one. Just to let you know, in the front, when you put the prod in, that's what the bow on a crossbow is called, if you're new to this. When you put the prod in, there are two small rubber rectangles and one small steel rectangle that go in with it. One underneath, one on top, creating a sandwich, and then the steel plate goes on top of that, so that when you screw this down, this is pressing on the steel, but it protects the prod from the steel and the hardness of the actual frame itself with those two rubber pads. This helps to prevent anything going wrong with the prod, and it prevents it from breaking. It's listed as an 80-pound draw crossbow, which means when you pull the string back to get it from the neutral position all the way into the fully cocked position, that requires 80 pounds worth of force, and this is meant to fire a bolt, which is what you would call a crossbow arrow, again, for those of you who are new to this. It will throw a bolt at speeds up to 175 feet per second. Now, is it possible for this to throw a bolt faster than that? Yes, if you use a lighter weight bolt. However, if the weight of the bolt is too low, this effectively is called dry firing, which is to say firing this without a bolt in it. And that can damage the string, it can damage the tips, it can actually damage the prod. So in other words, you can break this tool if you use it incorrectly. The 3 arrows that come with it are the lightest weight arrows that you are meant to be able to use with this. So the arrows that you would use with a crossbow, first of all, are normally referred to as bolts, although sometimes people will refer to them as arrows, are much shorter than the kind of arrows that you would put in with a bow. Now, also they have a different knock on the back. They're either flat or half moon shape. With this particular crossbow, they're going to be flat. Now, these are the bolts that come with this particular crossbow pistol, and these weigh in at 104 grains. They come with target points, not suitable for hunting, so even if hunting, for example, or pest control where you live is permissible with a crossbow under the law, these are not the ones to be using. This is what's called animal cruelty, rather than trying to get a clean kill. It's not that you can't get a clean kill with one of these, but the odds are perishingly small. Target points are designed to make as small a hole as possible in the target so you can reuse your target over and over again. In other words, they're not designed to make the kind of wound that will lead to an animal dying quickly. For that, you would need to use a different kind of bolt, one like this. Now, this is a fairly standard pistol crossbow hunting bolt. This particular one is made with an aluminum body, very thin aluminum, it has to be said, and again, plastic flights, only this one has a small broadhead on it. This will actually slice open the wound, leading to a great deal of bleeding, which causes loss of consciousness and death. So this is basically what you would use to hunt with, and not one of these. I'll be having a video specifically looking at arrowheads in the upcoming weeks, and we'll go into more detail then. But the point is, this weighs just a little bit less than the one that these come with, and these weigh in at about 100 grain each. So they're about 4 grain lighter. We're really talking about arrow weights, bolt weights, somewhere between the 6.5 and 7 gram mark. This is as light as you can go. Anything under 100 grains, you shouldn't be putting into this. It's going to go very fast, but one of the things about lighter weight bolts, they go faster, but they carry less energy. So for any kind of penetrating thing that you would want in a hunting bolt, for example, they're less useful. Actually, a slightly heavier hunting bolt that goes a tiny bit slower but carries more energy is in fact more useful for a hunting context in the first place. On the other hand, you don't want to make it too heavy, because as it's traveling in a straight line, gravity's acting on it as well. So it's not traveling in a straight line when you loose one of these bolts. It's actually traveling in a diagonal going down, unless you angle it upwards and it has an arc. This is called ballistics, and again, we'll go into more of that later on, but the point is these will, at this particular weight, fire very straight and can be used for target practice and training, or possibly a hunting context or other training context, depending on what kind of target you're shooting at. Let's have a little closer look at the bow itself. So the Cobra is what's known as a self-cocking bow. You may be wondering about this little tail here. This is actually the cocking lever. Now there's a little button here which actuates a latch. Normally, that when it's in this position, the neutral position, it's latched shut so it doesn't fall down. But if you press that, it loosens it. You have two rods, one on either side, which are held just behind the bowstring on the servings, which are the extra little wraps that occur on the bowstring to protect it. And up here you have a spur, which you can use for leverage, and then when you press this button you can begin to cock. And when it's fully cocked, it engages the safety by pushing it back, and this is an ambidextrous safety because you have a pin on either side, so it doesn't matter if you're operating this left-handed or right. And there's a notch, a little groove, into which the string will drop. That's why it's in this position. At this point, the weapon is cocked. It is not loaded. It is not loaded until we take one of the bolts, and there's a little retaining spring here, which we go under the retaining spring and slide the bolt back. And there's a wire back here which helps prevent the bolt from going too far back and keeps it just in front of where the spring is. The string, I should say, is. Now, at this point, it's loaded but on safe. Now, if you were to drop this, it would go off, because if you push that string out of that little groove, it will fire. It'll loose the bolt. And so when we call this a safety, yes, you can't pull the trigger, but it could still go off. So you still must never, even on safe, point one of these at another human being or at an animal or anything else you don't want to shoot, because it could go off accidentally. And of course, if we have this taken off safe by pushing this forward, like so, you can then fire it into your target. Now, this comes with fixed iron sights. You have a front sight, which is this little post here, if you can see that. And then you have a rear sight, which has an elevation and windage knobs that will allow you to raise this sight up or down, left, and slide this little notch left or right, which will allow you to zero it in. At the moment, it is fairly well zeroed in, and it does give you some good accuracy. So this is called self-cocking, not because it cocks itself, but because you don't have to have a foot stirrup in the front to put your foot into. You can just hold on to this spur, and by cocking the lever, it quickly cocks the weapon. At that point, you can simply slide in a bolt, take it off safe, and fire. This is dangerous because it does fire these bolts at rather high speed. Let's have a look. So my crony works in meters per second, so I'll flash up the speed in feet per second on the bottom of the screen. And we'll fire the 3 training bolts that it comes with. So, an average of 180 feet per second as advertised on the box. I'm quite happy with that. This has quite a lot of energy and will hit a target with something like 7 to 8 foot-pounds of force, which is certainly enough to hunt small game with where legal. Now, I will say that it's going to be modified. Obviously, this is the standard pistol form, whether you have it in the aluminum frame like I have here, or the polymer frame, it's pretty much of a muchness. It's not a great deal, except this weighs a tiny bit more, but only a tiny bit because there's really not that much metal here to begin with. But when we start making our modifications, we'll be turning this into a self-loading weapon, not just self-cocking, because one of the things we're going to be adding is a magazine. Now that means that every time we cock the weapon, an arrow will automatically drop in and you'll be able to fire your next bolt without having to first insert that separately. That also means we need to add a foregrip, and we'll talk about that in a second, because although it's safe to use this spur to cock the weapon in this form, once it has a magazine, if something were to go wrong, when we're cocking, the string has to fit into this space here. If for whatever reason it were to jump out and there's an arrow, a bolt in that track, with your hand in this position, it'll automatically shoot into your own hand. Now, the AR-6 Stinger is actually based on the Cobra platform originally. It's a bit more sophisticated than what we're doing here, but the original Stinger retained that spur. If you look now to buy one, you'll be buying the Stinger 2, and that no longer has the spur because they don't want your hand anywhere near here because it's a major safety issue. If you accidentally lose control of the weapon while you're cocking it, you could put an arrow into your own hand, crippling yourself very badly at least, and permanently possibly. So it's not a good thing. One of the things we'll be doing then is adding a foregrip, which will allow us to hold on to the weapon below that line of fire and will allow us to cock without having to place our forward hand at risk. Whether you're doing it right-handed or left, doesn't matter. That's the same deal. So that magazine will be a change. Obviously, we'll have to put the foregrip on here, and we'll also be making a special adapter to this to make the shoulder stock. Now, obviously, if you're not using the Cobra platform, you can do this with another one of the pistol crossbows, something like the Alligator, for example, which already comes with a shoulder stock, although it's still classified as a pistol crossbow. In that instance, you will need to actually do that bit, but everything else more or less the same. Again, I've chosen this particular model because it's the most popular model in the world as far as I can tell, and you may already have one, so let's start with that. Now, you will see lots of videos if you start looking for videos about the Cobra Crossbow Pistol, because lots of people have them, lots of videos have been made. But as a general rule of thumb, one thing about the Cobra Crossbow Pistol is not mentioned, and it's one of the advantages of this aluminum frame one, and that's a little bit on the bottom right here. Now there's a flat section right here, and there are two holes here and here. And those two holes are threaded. And if you take an M4 screw, 4mm thread bolt, I should say, not a regular screw, this is, as you can see, more of a bolt style screw, if you can see it. And that will actually go into there, and this one's a Phillips head. And we can screw that in nice and tight. This one's too long, but I'm just basically trying to give you the idea. So you have the one hole in that position, and you have a second one here. Now these two holes are pre-drilled and pre-threaded. And it's one of the reasons why you want the aluminum frame one. I don't even know if the polymer one has these two holes in it. But what I will tell you is that these are essential in order to mount a Picatinny rail to the bottom and then mount your foregrip to that. And we'll be looking at more of that in the episode where we're looking at mounting the foregrip. But that will give you a good foregrip on the front. We'll have the stock on the back, we'll have the magazine on top, and we'll have our aiming system attached to it, as well as the light will be attached to this. And it will be very impressive and, as I say, a lot of fun. But like driving a car, there's fun that requires a degree of mature responsibility and not stupidity, because if you're going to be stupid with this, don't do it. And if you think that shooting someone with one of these is a good idea, I recommend psychological counseling straight away. And there are many good psychologists who might be able to help you. If, however, you're going to use this like a responsible adult, I hope you enjoy the upcoming episodes where we modify this particular weapon into something that we can use for tactical training, for target practice, for small game hunting where legal, and for potentially self-defense where appropriate and legal. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that if you've not already subscribed, you understand that you need to subscribe now so you can get the other videos as they come up. And also, if you haven't clicked the bell icon, do so you'll see the new videos as soon as they come up, and then you'll see this converted into something that is a heck of a lot of fun. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a good one.